So this week we have a guest on our YouTube channel. I'm so excited to welcome Rachel. I'm going to give her a minute to introduce herself. Just tell us a little bit about what she's been doing, what her experience in the classroom, and what also energizes you about the classroom, because we know the summer kind of is our time to rejuvenate. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks. So, yeah, my name is Rachel, and I am the face behind Engaging Early Learners. I currently teach second grade in class resource. I'm a special education teacher, and that really just means that I'm in a big inclusion classroom of 23 students, and it's myself and my co teacher, which we'll talk about in a minute. I used to teach preschool special education in a self contained setting, which kind of inspired me to start creating products and posting on Instagram. And what energizes me about teaching is that I just love to work with students on so many different ability levels, especially in my setting right now where I get to work with general education students and special education students. I think that's my favorite part, just working with so many different levels and abilities of students.
Yeah. So how did you know that you wanted to go into like co-teaching experiences? Like, how did you stumble upon that?
So I didn't. So I was teaching preschool, self-contained, and I taught that for 3 years. I truly became just burnt out and exhausted, and I went to my principal January of 2020 and I said, "I need a change. I
Mhm.
can't really do like I can't do it anymore like for my
Yeah.
mental health." And he was like, "Okay, but if you want to stay here," which I did,
Mhm.
"we only have co-teaching because you're a special education teacher
Mhm.
here, so that's what we have for you." And I said, "Co-teaching? Like, I'd have to share a space, and, like, I'd have to actually, like, collaborate, and, like, it wouldn't be fully mine." And he's like, "Yes, Rachel, but, like, you that would be good for you." Side note, I wanna be a principal one day and a supervisor, so he's like, "Rachel, that would be good for you." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And truly only because I wanted to stay at that school is why I
Mhm.
did it. And I kind of just did it, and I didn't think it was for me. I didn't think I could do it. I like things being a certain way. I'm very type A.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I kind of just walked right into it. And I'm
Yeah.
also really lucky I got second grade because second grade's a sweet spot. But yeah, I didn't even want it, but here I am.
That's so cool. I'm glad you got to share that, because I feel like some people might be really hesitant to like try something new or
Oh
be
yeah.
in a different classroom or be with a co-teacher. So, ultimately, what has worked well for you in co-teaching?
So definitely the fact that my co-teacher and I come from 2 completely different backgrounds, and that you can't plan for, but in
Mhm.
my situation, it has worked out really well. I came from teaching 3 years of preschool self-contained, which is like one extreme, and her background is 2nd and 3rd grade general education, teaching the highest of high academic students, and she's been teaching for 20 years. So
Mhm.
we were like complete opposites, but we have some similarities, like we're both very type A. We're both very organized. We're both willing to put in all the work, stay for all the hours. So it's kind of a balancing act, but it kind of helps that we did come from those 2 different backgrounds. And then the key thing is communication. I'll probably say that 100 times right now, but
Mhm.
communication is key, and that is what is keeping us afloat, truly, because we've definitely had some tough moments in there, but communication throughout the whole thing is the most important.
Yeah. Have you ever had to do like some type of mediation between you two of like, hey, I need somebody else to listen to my side of the view and your side of the view and help us come together? Have you done anything like that?
So, we have not gotten to that point. I think we probably could have. It would have helped at some points instead of just us attempting
Yeah.
to hash it out. I do think it would have helped to have a third party, but I think both of us are very hard-headed and we don't want to have to bring anyone else into it. We're very similar in that way.
Yeah.
So, we did try and successfully worked out all of any, tough conversations that we had to have by ourselves.
Yeah. Has there been any other obstacles that you've come across along the way? I know communication is a huge piece of it.
Yes, communication. And what I tell people is like it's a literal marriage. And I've never been married, okay? But now I
Mhm.
know what it feels like because you are not only sharing a space with someone 24/7, but
Mhm.
every little thing you want to do with your kids, like your students, but like your children,
Mhm.
you have to, talk to the other person about and like, what do you think about this? But what do you think? And you have to compromise. Like all the things
Mhm.
that they tell you a marriage is about, you would know, you have to do in co-teaching.
Mhm.
And It's crazy. So, honestly, that has been the biggest obstacle, combining both of our viewpoints and trying to come together and trying to find a happy medium and, really finding respect for each other in the middle of that, where like I really respect where you're coming from and your experiences. I respect where you're coming from, your experiences, and let's come together.
Yeah.
Um, it's been fun.
Yeah. I mean, because you're ultimately all there for the kids, right? You're all in, all there, like supporting the kids in whatever they need, but you got to sometimes put your stuff aside for the moment to just be there for the kids,
Yeah,
ultimately.
and it helps that my co-teacher feels the same way like what you just said. We both truly are
Yeah.
there for the kids, and like I said before, we both will spend all hours of any day like for
Mhm.
our kids, so that helps.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know there's moments probably too where you're like, why did you put your pen there? I do not want your pen there. And you're like, okay, but does this really matter on the big screen scheme of things? Like, is that going to change my lesson or not? Like, but I know those moments because it is, you're totally right. It's like a marriage. So yeah, that's crazy. So
Yep.
crazy world. I've never been a part of it. I have no teaching, co-teaching experience. So that's why I wanted to bring you on to chat more about it.
Oh, of course.
So what's the first thing you should do? Say I have teachers who are coming in and for the new school year, they have a new co-teacher. What's the first thing or the first couple things that they should be doing?
Communicate. I mean, like, that
Yeah.
is it. Like, you need to get in touch with that person. You
Mm-hmm.
need to go out to lunch with them, chat
Yeah.
with them, get to know them as, like, a human being. What do they care about? What are their passions? Because I think if you build a rapport with that person and respect for them, you will be in a better marriage, a better
Mm-hmm.
co-teaching situation if you respect that person and know them well. And then of course, start talking about your teaching backgrounds and how you believe certain things should be done. Silly tiny things like, do you care if we send the tests home and get them signed or do you not care? Actual situation in my classroom. Like little things like that
Mm-hmm.
though can cause rifts or like
Mm-hmm.
tough conversations. So it's
Yeah.
important to know before the school year starts, like, what do you think about this? What are your beliefs in this?
Mm-hmm.
Um, how flexible can you be with lesson planning or this, like different
Yeah.
little things and just get to know them. And then I think before the school year starts and during, making that time, setting aside that time to sit down, talk, and make sure you always are checking in with each other. I think for a
Mm-hmm.
long time, my co-teacher and I just were like, let's just get through the days. But it's like, we need to sit down, just like probably in a marriage, like we need to talk
Mm-hmm.
and communicate with each other and not just keep going through our days, maybe tucking things to the side. We need to sit down weekly and we need to chat.
Yeah. And I think part of it too is that you've said a lot about like getting to know the other person, asking questions for the other person, but like also you sharing how I feel about getting tests signed in at home or like how I feel about lesson planning or what I need. And how much flexibility are you willing to give for that? And this is something I'm really set in because I believe we should give homework to students. And they're like, what? No, no homework. Right.
Yeah.
And like having that conversation, it is a two-way street back and forth. Totally.
Yep.
Totally. Cool. So how do you find that time, right? We know our days are so busy. How do we find that time to communicate, and figure out like that co-planning or like, do you separate it? Like you plan science, I'll plan math, or like, how did you figure that out?
Yeah. So we do split it. Um, Even though we both are on the same page about like what the other person's doing, but it just makes it easier. Um, we for a long time were not sitting down and communicating like that. So eventually we were like, how about every week after our grade level meeting, we have a double prep after that. Why don't we sit down? That's our time to chat. Let's make sure like our student teacher leaves the room, everybody leaves, like it is our time, you and I. Let's sit
Mhm.
down and chat. And that became really important to us, especially if tough conversations came up. And tough conversations just being like little disagreements, maybe about certain
Mhm.
things that what we want to do, our beliefs. We're very different people. So that was important. Um, yeah, just setting aside a set time, not just saying like, oh, every week, let's meet. No, no, no. Like, what
Yeah.
time are we meeting? And then as far as the planning and copying of the papers and stuff like that, we do kind of split it by subject. It's just easier for us that way. That's
Mhm.
how we figured it out.
Yeah.
I'm a math person, she's an ELA person. So right off the bat, first year co-teaching together, that's kind of how we split it up and it's been like that ever since. Um so yeah.
Yeah, my school has something that we call protected plans. So that is like uninterrupted. You can't be put into a substitute position. Like you are protected to have your plan. And so like that is such a great time to be utilized for if you do have something like that that says like we are working together during this time. It is protected, it's not going anywhere. And I feel like there was a different like layer of that. Like, oh, you're in a plan. Like, no, you're at a protected plan. Like it's not going anywhere. Like you are required to have that day, that meeting, that period, whatever it is. So something to think about if you can talk to your administration about it.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you decide how you were going to deliver instruction as two teachers? Because I've seen the models where it's two teachers in a room, they're both in the front of the classroom giving instruction. And then I've also seen it the opposite way where it's like one is giving instruction and the other one's just kind of floating around and mingling with the students and making sure like maybe a small group needs more isolated skills. Like, how did you guys figure that out? And then what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so it's been super weird for us. This is my third year co-teaching with my co-teacher in second grade, and I feel like this is the first normal year.
Mm-hmm.
Year one of second grade, it was like we were still deep COVID, kind of virtually teaching. Last year, they had to be 3 feet apart, mask, the whole thing, no
Yeah.
small group instruction. This year is the first normal year. So I can't speak on too much experience about this, but what I will say, we do a lot of small groups in my district. They push that a lot. So a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times you'll see us just like my co-teacher's at her small group table with a group. I'm at mine. Some kids are independent. We're also walking around. It looks a lot like that. I guess
Mm-hmm.
would be like parallel teaching in like the co-teaching handbook, they would call
Yeah.
that. Um, if we are teaching a science or social studies lesson, we do those whole group. And most of the time, it is one of us leading, one of us assisting. I think
Mm-hmm.
we both have very strong personalities. So we like to give each other our space. So we don't like to both stand at the front. We've just kind of realized it's not for us. It's not for everybody. I know co teachers that just play off each other real well, stand up there, and it's like a Broadway show. They
Mm-hmm.
do
Yeah.
it great. Not us.
Yeah.
We like to be a one woman show. So, and it especially helps in our classroom because we do need a lot of students that need that support at their desk while there's someone learning. So, someone's at the desks, someone's up teaching, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what works for us. But again, there's so many different ways to do it. And we also like to split up the teaching, kind of like I was saying before. So,
Mm-hmm.
because we do a lot of small groups for math and ELA, science and social studies is like the one time where one of us has to do it. So we like to switch off. Someone does a unit of science, someone does a unit of social studies, and that's how we switch off. So it's
Yeah.
always kind of like even, although no one's sitting there like calculating the amount of minutes, it
Yeah.
feels even.
Yeah, I love that. And honestly, it does. It becomes to like, how do you work? How do I work? What subject do I feel most comfortable in? What subject do you feel most comfortable in?
Yeah.
And it is that back and forth conversation. And you totally need to be a marriage. Like, how are we going to mesh together and make this work for our students?
Yeah, and just being honest, like I tell my co-teacher, like I don't like writing. I don't
Yeah.
like science. Like I just like literally tell her.
Mhm.
And she tells me too. And that is what makes it amazing because you get to co-teach and you get to hand something off to the other person.
Yeah. And for whatever reason, and that communication really does help you move each other forward, right?
Yeah.
So that they can learn tips and tricks from you about math and you'll learn tips and tricks from them about ELA. So that if
Yeah.
you ever do separate and decide to go just as yourself in the classroom, you can take some of that learning experience that you've gotten, whether you believe it or not, into your own classroom to do that with your own students.
Yeah, that's definitely a benefit of co-teaching. You are learning every single day from someone else.
Yeah.
So that's really cool because not everyone gets to
Yeah, that's awesome. So do you have any other tips and tricks for us with working with a co-teacher?
Um, Probably the only other thing would be like don't be afraid to switch up your routine. Um, I think we constantly are sitting down and saying like is this working? Do we need to switch up our groups? Do we need to do this whole group for this lesson or for this unit? Will this work better this way? Should you really teach this one because you've been teaching for 20 years and I have no idea what I'm doing? My side note, my first year in second grade co-teaching, I had to do the first science unit, matter, and I literally printed all the material and was reading it at home because I was like, "What's matter again?" And, like, I was, what, like, 25 years old? That's ridiculous. But I was like, "Can you just do it for a couple weeks? I'll watch you."
Mm-hmm.
So, don't ever be afraid to switch it up, Even day to day, sometimes we decide in the morning, we're like, oh no, whole group, you do it, you know how to do it. Um, and be flexible. I think obviously in teaching in general, you need
Yeah.
to be flexible and you need to not be afraid to switch up your routine, but especially in co-teaching, especially when there's someone else involved. Don't be afraid to speak up for yourself in that situation and say, like, I really think we need to switch this up. But I have a lot of more tips and tricks in my blog post all about co-teaching, and I also did a Facebook Live in my Facebook group where I it was me and another friend I have that is also a co-teacher, and we discussed co-teaching for like probably an hour and a half. So that's a good watch too, in my Facebook group if you want more tips and tricks.
Yeah, and I will definitely leave the links below for anybody who wants to check out your blog or your Facebook group and watch that hour-and-a-half video. Um, I hope we can do it on 2 times speed. I know I listen to all my videos on 2 times speed.
Please
So,
do.
yeah, totally. Is there any other tips and tricks you have for us at all?
I think that's it.
Awesome. So if anybody has any other questions or anything, or you found this really helpful, you can find Rachel in the links below. I'll leave all of her social media links there. And also, if you want to leave any comments with questions, I will make sure Rachel can reach out and get that for you. So thanks, Rachel, for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for watching today's video. If you're new here, make sure to click that like and subscribe button. It would mean so much to me. Click the bell to get notifications for when new videos get released or I go live. As always, leave a comment if you have any questions.